It always started with the smell of burnt toast. Mornings in our house weren't chaotic, just stubbornly human. Ethan liked his bread nearly charred, and the toaster never cooperated on the first try. While he fiddled with it, I brewed coffee that could wake the dead and scanned my inbox before heading to work. "Mom, can I skip breakfast if I bring a granola bar?" "Nope. You'll eat here like a civilized human," I said without looking up. He grinned, knowing the rule was more ritual than punishment. We'd built small routines like that, anchors against the noise outside. Willow Creek wasn't big, but it had ambition. Parents there competed like Olympic athletes. Who had the best grades, the most volunteering hours, the most impressive kid? I used to find it exhausting. Now I just found it amusing. Ethan didn't need competing parents. He had curiosity that ate up everything mechanical. When he was 8, he took apart the vacuum to see how air moves. When he was 10, he built a working model of a catapult using popsicle sticks and math he claimed he invented. Now at 11, he was the youngest in the robotics club. The team met after school in the tech lab, a narrow room smelling of solder and ambition. Their latest goal: win the district's first advanced STEM program slot. An honor that came with sponsorships, field trips, and bragging rights that could power an entire PDA's worth of gossip. I was proud of him. Not loud proud like the others, but quietly so, in the way you smile at something fragile you don't want to jinx. "Mom, if our robot works, can I name it Volt?" "You can name it whatever you want," I said. "As long as it doesn't explode." He laughed, and the sound filled the kitchen like light. By the time I dropped him off, the parking lot was already half full of SUVs and self-importance. The PTA president, Diane Harlow, stood by the school steps, perfectly coiffed at 8 a.m. Her son Brady trailed behind, nose buried in a phone. "Good morning, Lauren," she called, voice sugary and sharp. "Big day for your little engineer, huh?" "Big day for everyone," I replied, keeping my smile polite. Diane thrived on competition disguised as courtesy. Her husband, Robert, chaired the local school board, which made her the unelected queen of Willow Creek Elementary. People laughed at her jokes even when they weren't funny. She gave Ethan a once-over, the kind adults think kids don't notice, and said, "Oh, robotics, how cute. Brady's more into golf, but we do appreciate the technical side of things." I nodded, the universal response for "please stop talking before I say something regrettable." After she left, Ethan whispered, "Mom, why does she talk like that?" "She's practicing to run for mayor," I said. He laughed again. I smiled. That morning, I didn't know it yet, but laughter would become rarer soon. At work, spreadsheets filled my screen, predictable and obedient. Data didn't lie, didn't gossip, didn't exclude. Numbers were clean things, and I liked that. But the emails started trickling in a few days later. Subject lines like STEM program results and congratulations to selected students. I opened Ethan's. "We regret to inform you that your child was not selected for this year's advanced STEM program." The words sat on my screen, sterile and final. I read them twice, then once more for good measure. It didn't make sense. Ethan's project had ranked top in every trial. His teachers had submitted glowing recommendations. I checked the results list. Brady Harlow's name gleamed near the top. For a second, I thought maybe I was mistaken. Maybe he'd suddenly developed a passion for robotics overnight. Maybe talent had bloomed late. But then I remembered Diane's smug smile that morning, and the quiet, efficient way power moves in small towns. I closed my laptop slowly. Somewhere between the burnt toast and that email, something in me shifted. Barely audible, like the first crack in ice before it breaks. And I thought, no one plays fair forever. But I can play quieter. 2 days later, I stood in the school cafeteria surrounded by pastel tablecloths and forced cheer. The PTA brunch had a theme this month, celebrating future innovators. The irony could have powered the lights. Diane Harlow floated between tables like she was running a campaign rally. Her dress looked expensive enough to fund a semester of tuition. And every parent who spoke to her did so like she was royalty. I poured myself orange juice that tasted vaguely of envy and sugar. "Lauren, over here," called Kara, another robotics mom. She looked sheepish as she slid into the seat beside me. "You heard who made it in, right?" I nodded. "I saw the email." Kara hesitated, then whispered, Brady Harlow's name's on there. Didn't he miss the second qualifying round? Apparently that didn't matter. I smiled, small and cold. Some kids have better attendance records in dinner parties than in classrooms. Kara stifled a laugh. You didn't hear that from me, she said, eyes darting to where Diane was laughing too loudly with Principal Cole. The principal was kind but cautious, someone who'd learned survival in the school politics jungle. Her polite nods to Diane always looked rehearsed. Diane eventually spotted me and made her way over, balancing a mimosa like a trophy. Oh, Lauren, she said, voice dripping honey. Don't take the results too hard. These selections are so nuanced. There's more to success than just test scores. Nuanced, I repeated. That's a nice word for it. Her smile tightened, but she kept going. Brady's been working with a private tutor all year. You should look into that for Ethan. It's an investment. I'll keep that in mind. She took a sip, then leaned closer. Honestly, sometimes the board looks for family involvement. They value leadership, you know? Connections. There it was, the slip beneath the silk. I see, I said. My tone was neutral, but inside something clicked into place. Connections. Of course. She left to greet another parent, leaving the faint scent of expensive perfume and hypocrisy. The rest of the brunch blurred. The applause for the selected students. The polite laughter. The buzzwords about equity and innovation. By the time I drove home, the words "we regret to inform you" had replayed in my head enough times to lose meaning. But the tone behind Diane's voice stayed sharp. That night, while Ethan slept, I sat at the dining table staring at his robotics project. A tangle of wires and sensors that had worked perfectly, unlike the people judging it. He'd written a note on the circuit board in marker. Volt equals vision, opportunity, logic, teamwork. He believed in fairness. I used to. Now I believed in evidence. I opened my laptop. Not the school's parent portal, but the district's transparency site. Every board meeting had minutes. Every vendor had a record. Every approval a digital trail. Somewhere in those neat rows of bureaucracy, I'd find what she thought no one would bother to look for. Because I might not have connections, but I had time. And I had motive. By the end of the week, the whispers had started. In Willow Creek, gossip moved faster than the morning traffic line at drop-off. All it needed was one parent with a Bluetooth headset, and too much time between errands. The story changed shape depending on who told it. Some said the STEM selection had been influenced. Others said it was just politics. Everyone said it quietly. At first, I pretended not to care. I smiled when people offered pity disguised as politeness. Ethan's such a bright boy, he'll get another chance. Translation. You're not one of us. But then small things began to surface, sloppy edges in an otherwise polished lie. At pickup one afternoon, I overheard Principal Cole talking to another teacher near the front gate. We didn't even get to see all the applications before they finalized the list, the teacher said. Cole's reply was soft, almost apologetic. Some decisions are above my pay grade. She noticed me, straightened her posture, and smiled too brightly. Oh, Ms. Mitchell. Ethan did so well this semester. Keep encouraging him. I thanked her, but something in her eyes told me the truth. She knew, and she hated being part of it. At dinner that night, Ethan asked, Mom, why didn't they pick Volt? I paused over my fork. Sometimes people make choices that don't make sense. He frowned. That's dumb. Yes, I said. It is. The next morning, the PTA meeting turned into a victory lap for Diane. She stood at the front of the library, holding a clipboard like it was a scepter. We're so proud of all the selected families, she said, voice carrying just enough tremor to sound humble. Brady's been working so hard, late nights dedication. It really shows when families prioritize education. She didn't look at me when she said it. She didn't need to. The parents clapped politely. I didn't. When the meeting ended, she approached me near the coffee station. Lauren, I hope there are no hard feelings. You know how competitive this gets. Of course, I said. It's just about merit, right? Her lips curved. Naturally. As she turned to leave, I noticed her phone screen light up. An email header visible for half a second. Subject. Grant transfer confirmation. It was enough. A single breadcrumb, but in my world, data was gospel. That evening, I drove home with the windows down, the spring air sharp against my face. I wasn't angry anymore. Anger burned too fast. What I felt now was colder, something that could last. Ethan worked on Volt in the garage, humming softly. "Mom," he said without looking up. "Do you think people can cheat and still win?" "Sometimes," I said. "But not forever." He nodded, satisfied with the answer. Inside, I opened my laptop again. Rumors were useful, but I preferred proof. And if Diane's perfect little kingdom had cracks, I'd find every one of them. In my day job, numbers told stories. Quiet ones, the kind people didn't always want to hear. Budgets, invoices, reimbursements. I'd learned long ago that corruption didn't live in cash. It lived in columns. So I started where I always start, the paperwork. Willow Creek Elementary had a transparency portal on its district website. Most parents never looked past the newsletters and bake sale updates. But hidden behind 3 nested menus sat a goldmine of public documents, budgets, meeting minutes, procurement records. I spent 3 nights reading through them. At first glance, everything looked routine. Line items, receipts, digital signatures, until one entry caught my eye. Vendor. Willow STEM Development Initiative. Amount. $14,280. Memo. Equipment purchase reimbursement. Approved by D. McAllister. Diane. The name was everywhere once I started looking. Her committee, her signatures, her donor acknowledgments. It wasn't illegal. Not yet. But it was sloppy. I cross-referenced the amounts with her PDA newsletters and found something else. The STEM program's funding spike coincided exactly with the month her husband's company sponsored the school's new media lab. A sponsorship that didn't appear in the official ledger. Interesting. I made copies, screenshots, backups on a flash drive I kept in my work bag. Ethan's homework was spread out beside me, pencil marks smudged on his fingers. "Mom, are you doing homework too?" he asked. "Something like that," I said. By Friday, I had a small folder labeled WCSD_corruption_draft 1. Nothing fancy, just evidence, quiet, clean, damning. But evidence alone wasn't enough. I needed timing. That weekend, Diane hosted her annual spring community brunch. Every PTA mother in the district attended. It was part social event, part performance review. I didn't plan to go. Until I realized I had a reason. Saturday morning, I printed 3 pages from the district's records. One showing the inflated STEM reimbursement, one showing the missing sponsor entry, and one email I'd managed to extract through the public correspondence archive. Subject: STEM funding, approval discrepancy. Body: let's keep this internal for now. We can adjust the figures before submission. Sender: DMC listé. I slipped the papers into an envelope. Not addressed, not signed. At the brunch, I didn't stay long. I smiled, accepted a mimosa, listened to Diane gush about transparency and accountability. Her laughter was a little too loud. Before I left, I placed the envelope on the sign-in table, under a neat stack of donation forms. Then I went home. I didn't check my email that night. I didn't need to. The next morning, the school's group chat was on fire. Parent 1. Did anyone see the documents someone dropped off yesterday? Parent 2. If this is real, she's in serious trouble. Parent 3. No way Diane would risk her position, she's too smart for that. But she wasn't. She was smart enough to play politics. Not smart enough to hide from a mother who understood numbers. That Monday, the district quietly announced a routine audit of the Willow STEM initiative. No names mentioned. No fingers pointed. But Diane didn't show up for school drop-off. Lauren didn't smile. She just sipped her coffee, looked out at the neat rows of houses, and whispered, not triumph, not glee, just steady calm. First crack. 2 weeks later, the district called for an emergency transparency session. That's bureaucratic code for someone's caught, but we're pretending it's routine. The meeting was scheduled for a Thursday evening in the Willow Creek High Auditorium. Parents were invited, teachers were encouraged to attend, and the email's tone was as bright as a ticking bomb. I went. The parking lot buzzed with quiet speculation. Couples standing close, voices low. Inside, the stage lights were too bright, and the folding chairs squeaked like they didn't want to be there either. Diane stood near the podium, her pearl earrings trembling slightly every time she tucked her hair behind her ear. She still wore her PDA badge. She still smiled. But she was paler than usual. The superintendent cleared his throat into the mic. "Good evening, everyone. As part of our ongoing effort to maintain fiscal transparency," the usual jargon followed. Numbers, compliance, integrity, all meaningless filler until he finally said it. "We've identified irregularities in reimbursement documentation within the Willow STEM initiative." A ripple passed through the room like a slow-rolling wave. Diane's smile didn't move, but her eyes darted to the side. To her husband, sitting in the third row. He looked like a man who'd just remembered he'd left the stove on, somewhere very far away. The superintendent continued. "We are cooperating with the county auditor to ensure that all funds are properly accounted for." The audience murmured. Questions started forming. And then came the first one. A hand raised from 3 rows behind me. Were these approvals done by the same people overseeing the donations? Every head turned to Diane. She stood, smoothed her skirt, walked to the microphone with the poise of someone holding a porcelain mask. "Those forms were reviewed by several committee members," she said, her voice honey-sweet. "But it's easy for numbers to appear misleading when pulled out of context." That line would have worked, if not for what came next. A man from the back, I recognized him, a quiet dad from Ethan's soccer team, stood up holding a printout. "Then why does your email say, 'We can adjust the figures before submission'?" Silence. Diane froze. Her husband shifted uncomfortably. The superintendent blinked, mouth open but no sound coming. "Where did you get that?" she finally whispered. "Public record request," he said. "Anyone can access it." I didn't move, didn't speak. Just watched. Watched as the mask cracked, line by line. The meeting ended in chaos. People shouting questions, cameras flashing, reporters scribbling notes. Diane tried to leave through a side door, but a local journalist intercepted her. "Mrs. McAllister, do you have any comment about the ongoing audit?" Her pearl earring fell as she turned away. I drove home in silence. Ethan was already asleep when I got back. The neighborhood was quiet again, the calm after an earthquake. At my desk, I opened my laptop and checked the local news site. Headline: School Board faces scrutiny over misused STEM funds. Subheading: Audit launched after anonymous documents surface. I closed the lid. Then, for the first time since this began, I allowed myself a small smile. Because I knew what came next wasn't chaos. It was precision. They thought this was the storm. It wasn't. It was only the wind picking up. By the following Monday, the district office smelled like burnt coffee and panic. Emails leaked, meetings canceled, and the once bulletproof PDA chair, Diane McAllister, was temporarily relieved of her duties pending investigation. The announcement came in a 2-paragraph email, the kind that tries to sound calm but reads like smoke. Parents forwarded it around with little notes. "Wow. Did you see this? About time." By lunchtime, the story had climbed to the top of the local news feed. Willow Creek School Board to undergo restructuring after funding controversy. That word, restructuring, was doing a lot of heavy lifting. I kept my head down. In the pickup line, I chatted about weather, soccer practice, birthday parties. No one knew it was me. That was the beauty of quiet revenge. It didn't need applause. Still, the fallout rippled. At the grocery store, I saw Diane's husband arguing on the phone near the self-checkout. Voice low but desperate. "No, I told you the account's frozen, just handle it." He didn't see me. I didn't look away. That night, a new PDA announcement appeared in everyone's inbox. Subject: Upcoming board elections, open nominations. The district will be holding a special session next month to reassign leadership roles within the Willow Creek Parent Board. The message was polite, democratic, and utterly devastating. By morning, the whispers began. Who'd run, who'd step down, who'd move on to focus on family. And just like that, the hierarchy shifted. The same women who'd once circled Diane like planets around a sun now kept their distance, suddenly remembering every slight she'd dealt them. I watched from the background. Quiet. Collected. The best revenge was never loud. It was sustainable. But one more move remained. A week later, the local paper ran an op-ed titled, "Accountability Starts at Home." No author listed. Just initials LH. It spoke about parental integrity, unchecked power, and the cost of moral shortcuts. It wasn't vindictive. It was surgical. The piece went mildly viral. The comments section filled with agreement. By Friday, Diane's resignation was official. And then, like the universe winking back at me, an email arrived from the district superintendent. "Ms. Harper, we noticed your thoughtful contributions to the transparency discussion. Would you consider joining the advisory board for the upcoming term?" I stared at it for a long moment. Then I typed 3 words. Yes. With pleasure. That night, after tucking Ethan into bed, I sat by the window with my tea. The town was still, porch lights flickering, sprinklers ticking. On my phone, the local news headline updated once more. New leadership promises clean slate for Willow Creek. Justice didn't roar. It reshuffled quietly. And as for Diane, I heard she'd taken a break from community work. Moved to her sisters in another state. Her name slowly disappeared from the newsletters, the directories, the gossip threads. Good. Because that's what happens when you play games with someone who knows how to audit the truth. I closed the blinds and whispered to no one. Justice served cold. A month after Diane's resignation, Willow Creek looked almost normal again. The hallways smelled like pencil shavings and floor wax. The bulletin boards filled with photos of science fairs and art shows. To the untrained eye, life had moved on. But beneath the calm, the ecosystem had changed. Meetings started on time. Budgets matched receipts. And no one used the words "we can adjust the figures" anymore. The new board held its first official session that evening. The gym was decorated with blue and white banners. Integrity. Transparency. Community. All the right words, finally meaning something. I arrived early. My seat was at the front now, a small brass plaque with my name. Lauren Harper, advisory member. A few rows back, whispers floated like background noise. Some parents speculated about Diane's situation. Others pretended they hadn't been part of her inner circle. When the superintendent entered, he smiled warmly. "Tonight, we begin a new chapter for Willow Creek," he said. The crowd applauded. My phone buzzed. A new email, from an unfamiliar address. "You think you won, Lauren? You destroyed my family for attention. I hope you can sleep at night." No signature. No surprise. I stared at the screen for a long moment. Then I clicked forward. Added one line. "This appears to be harassment from a former board member. Kindly document and block." Then I hit send. That was the difference between her and me. She reacted emotionally. I documented quietly. Later that week, the district published a community transparency handbook. The final draft included an entire case study, anonymized, on the dangers of internal favoritism and how financial ethics protect students' futures. I wrote it. It was reviewed, approved, and circulated across 3 neighboring school districts. No one knew who CASA referred to, but the people who mattered did. A month later, the local news featured me in a small piece. Local mother helps reform school board policies. It wasn't fame. It was permanence. A clean record etched in digital stone, where her name no longer existed. I didn't need to ruin her life, just her legacy. And I'd done it with receipts. That night, after putting Ethan to bed, I opened the old folder, the one marked WCSD_corruption_draft1, and deleted it. Files gone. Mission complete. In the reflection of the laptop screen, I saw my own faint smile. Not joy. Not pride. Just calm. Justice served cold. I murmured. Then closed the lid. Autumn rolled through Willow Creek with the kind of beauty that made everything look innocent again. Orange leaves swirled across sidewalks, the air smelled of cinnamon and rain, and the town moved on as if it hadn't just survived a quiet earthquake. Ethan's STEM class built small robots out of recycled parts that semester. He brought one home, a wobbly little creature with crooked wheels and marker eyes. "It doesn't move straight," he said. It's okay, I told him. It still works. That was the truth about everything. It didn't have to be perfect. It just had to be honest. Sometimes I'd pass the old community center where Diane used to host her fundraisers. The sign out front now read, Willow Creek Community Trust, EST 2024. Same building, new mission. I'd donated under the same pseudonym I'd used for the audit leak, AM. Anonymous Mother. One evening, as I was leaving the grocery store, I saw someone I hadn't expected, Diane's husband. He looked thinner, quieter. He paused when he saw me. Lauren, he said carefully. I just wanted to say you didn't have to go that far. I tilted my head slightly. I didn't go anywhere, I said. The truth did. He nodded once, looked away, and left without another word. The air felt lighter afterward, not because I'd won but because I didn't have to explain why. That night, after dinner, Ethan asked, Mom, why do people lie? Because they think the truth is weaker, I said. Is it? No, I told him, smiling faintly. It just takes longer to work. Outside, the first frost touched the lawns, turning everything silver and still. Justice wasn't loud here. It didn't march or shout. It lingered. Like cold air after rain. Like memory. Like proof. And somewhere in a quiet house 3 towns over, Diane would scroll past another district article quoting my handbook and know, without my name, without evidence, that I'd written it. That was the twist. Not that I'd exposed her, but that I'd replaced her. The same system she tried to control now carried my fingerprints. The same board she weaponized now quoted my ethics clause. Her power didn't collapse, it was rewritten. I closed my notebook that night and whispered the same 4 words I'd been saving for the very end. Justice. Served. With precision. Then, facing the camera, for those watching the story unfold, I'd say it the way it should be said. Some people think revenge is fire. But sometimes, it's frost. If you enjoyed watching Justice Served Cold, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more savage stories just like this.